Hello my beautiful friends, it's Amanda here, and today we're going to be duping one of my favorite palettes of the year. I'm talking about the Tarte Maneater palette. This palette was limited edition, it is no longer available, and that's really why I wanted to find dupes for you. I absolutely love this palette. I have raved about it a ton on my channel and on my Instagram page. I think that the shade selection in here is so perfect. I truly love everything about this palette, and if it was still available, it wouldn't even be a question. I would tell you, just go out and get this. Unfortunately, it's no longer available, so we are gonna find some dupes today, and I did have a pretty specific criteria for my dupe shades. First of all, obviously, I wanted them to be both the same shade and the same finish, so that they look exactly the same when they're applied to the eye. It was also important to me that all of my dupe shades are available as singles and not coming from other palettes. My reason for that is if you wanted to go out and get these dupes and kind of recreate this palette, I didn't want you to have to purchase an entire palette just for maybe one or two shades. Of course, buying single shades is still gonna be more expensive than it would have been to just buy this palette, but you really can't buy this palette anymore. Plus, if you're just interested in one or a few of these shades, then you don't have to go and purchase an entire palette just for one shade. You can really go and pick and choose which shade you're interested in, and then you can find the singles from there. On that note, I do want to mention that 3 of my dupes are created from a combination of 2 single shadows. So in order to dupe 3 of these shades, I did have to mix 2 singles to recreate the shade. Does that make sense? I tried really hard to get these shades to be as perfectly matched as possible, and to prove that to you, I am wearing the Maneater palette on one of my eyes and the same look with the dupe shades on the other eye. So if you want to see these dupes in action, stick around to the end of the video. I'll show you how I got this eye look using the Maneater palette and also the dupes for this palette. I gotta say, I think that this looks really dead on. I mean, I think my eyes look exactly the same. So try and guess which one's the Maneater palette, which one's the dupe side, and then at the end of the video, you can figure out if you were right. Let's go ahead and get into the swatches now. I'm just gonna show them to you on the back of my hand, no primer or anything like that, and I'm just gonna do finger swatches for you today. Let's start off with the face highlighter from the Maneater palette. This is the shade Lace, and the dupe is Nylon from MAC. This is an eyeshadow, but I mean, these just look dead on to me. That's Lace and that's Nylon. Next up we have this white matte shade from the Maneater palette. This one's called Meow, and this is really very easy to dupe. Any white matte shadow will work. I used NYX. This one's called I Have a Headache, and it's just a matte single. That's Meow, and that's I Have a Headache. This one is a little bit difficult to see just because it is really close to my skin tone. This is the shade Passion from the Maneater palette. It's a really light peachy cream. And the dupe that I have here is Beaches and Cream from Makeup Geek. Now, Beaches and Cream is a teeny tiny bit darker. Passion is a little bit paler, but once these are applied to the eye, they really look exactly the same. This is probably my favorite shade from the Maneater palette. This one's called Foxy, and this one was super hard to dupe. I know that it looks like it would be easy to find a dupe of this, but it was really difficult for me to find something that was close enough to pass for the same shade. So my dupe is actually a mixture of 2 shades from ColourPop. It's the Super Shock Shadow in La La, with the Super Shock Cheek highlighter in the shade Wisp on top. So to create this shade, I dipped my finger into La La and then a little bit of Wisp, and then I patted Wisp on top. So that's Foxy, and that's La La plus Wisp. Here's another one of my favorite shades from the palette, and again, a super difficult one to dupe. This is Purr from the Maneater palette. It's this really gorgeous tan meets mauve matte shade, And the dupe that I found, I know it looks a lot darker on camera, but I'm actually wearing these on my eyes today, and I think they look exactly the same on the eye. So the dupe is actually a mixture of Frappe from Makeup Geek and Burnt Orange from Anastasia. This is such a beautiful transition shade. So the dupe does look a little bit darker, but like I said, once it's applied to the eye, I think these look like perfect dupes. Next, we have this warm brown called Saucy. This is from the Maneater palette, and the dupe is from Makeup Geek. This is the shade Tan Lines, and these are both just such perfect, smooth, warm brown mattes. This is the shade Hypnotic from the Maneater palette, and it is just a little bit more bluish red tone, I guess, than the dupe. This is Burlesque from Morphe, but again, once these are applied to the eyes, they look the same. I am wearing these shades on my eyes today, and I think that they look like perfect dupes. This is the last shade from the Maneater palette. It's called Midnight, and it's a dark brown. I know it seems like this should be super easy to dupe, but I was chasing my tail a little bit on this one because it looks a lot warmer in the pan than it does in swatch. So that was tripping me up for a while. I was kind of going off of what it appears in the pan instead of what it looks like once it's applied. So this is Midnight, and the dupe is another combination. This is the Super Shock Shadow in Mittens with Anastasia Beverly Hills Smoke on top. So Mittens is too warm, Smoke is too cool, but once they're combined, I think they really look a lot like this shade from the Maneater palette. All right, now that you've seen all my dupes, I'm gonna go ahead and show you these shades in action. So which eye did you guess was the dupe eye, and which eye did you guess was the Maneater eye? Last chance to guess before you find out. This eye has the Maneater palette, and this eye has the dupes. I already applied my MAC Painterly paint pot, so I'm just using this matte white shade to set my eyelids, and I am going to use my Veramona color switch in between every shade. I won't show it every time, but I am going to use it every single time. And these white matte shades are just a little bit boring, so let's move on to this peach shade called Passion. I'm applying that into my crease first, and I'm gonna go back with another transition shade because this one doesn't show up very well on me. Now for a little Beaches and Cream from Makeup Geek, and again, this doesn't show up super well, but these do look very similar. Now for one of my favorite shades, this is Purr, and this is gonna be my warm kind of pinky tan transition shade. And the dupe here is a combination of Frappe from Makeup Geek and Burnt Orange from Anastasia Beverly Hills. Now I'm gonna do a little check-in just so that you can see so far how similar these shades really look on the eyes. I mean, these look exactly alike to me. Now we're moving on to Hypnotic, and I'm just applying that with a flat eyeshadow brush on the outer half of my eyelid. And the dupe for this shade is Burlesque from Morphe. Again, I'm just using the same method to apply that to the outer half of the lid. While these shades looked a little bit different in swatch, I do think that once they're applied to the eye, they look just the same. Now I'm going back to Purr, and I'm going to use that on my lower lash line. Not being too precise here, just kind of smudging that. And I did want to remind you, I'm color switching in between every shade. Back to the dupes here, this is Frappe and Burnt Orange, again on that lower lash line. Now it's time for my all over lid shade. I'm just using my finger to apply Foxy from the Maneater palette all over the lid, and this one is a little bit easier because I'm going to apply two different shades on the dupe eye. First, I'm laying down Lala, again just using my finger, and then I'm layering Wisp on top to give that extra shiny gold appearance. And here you can see once those two shades are combined, so similar. Now it's time for the inner corner highlight. I'm using the face highlighter from the Maneater palette. This one's called Lace. And here's the dupe, another one of my favorite all-time eyeshadows. It's Nylon from MAC. Just use a little detail brush to apply that to the inner corners. Now I'm going to show you a close-up of my finished eyeshadow look with no mascara on so that you can see close up and personal, these eyes look exactly alike. I don't know about you, but I think this eye look turned out perfectly. I love these dupes. I would love to turn this into a series, so if you have any suggestions for discontinued or limited edition palettes that you'd like to see dupes of, please leave your requests in the comments. I'll try my best to make it happen if I have those palettes. I do really want to keep this series, if it's going to turn into a series, just to limited edition and or discontinued palettes. I just think that is more useful, and honestly, if there are palettes out that are available, it's usually worth it to just get the palette. Cost-wise and just ease of use-wise, I think that investing in a palette that you're really interested in is worth it. But if that palette's no longer available, then you can't do that, and I want to help you find dupes for palettes that you might have missed out on. As always, thank you so much for watching and hanging out with me today, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye! Looks so good! Why was that so awkward? I tried really